It's a delight to catch up and chat with Mr. Raghavan Srinivasan, editor for Hindu Business Line in Chennai. And thank you so much for spending a couple of minutes and sharing some thoughts. And also thanks for coming and speaking to in our Young Leaders program today.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. In fact, I look forward to opportunities like this because, I think journalists, just like everybody else, you tend to sort of isolate yourself in an ivory tower. We are supposed to be in a interactive communications business, but you find that you are interacting with the same set of people. You meet the same bunch of politicians, bureaucrats, businessmen, and then your sort of worldview gets accordingly constricted. So I always look forward to opportunities to meet and interact with people whom I haven't met before, who are doing different things, and you always broaden your knowledge.
Thank you. My first thing I always wonder is what happens inside a journalist's head, because the way you think needs to be different from how all of us think when a particular issue comes. I mean, you deal with so many issues, so I was just wondering whether you could just dissect in terms of how you really think through that, because you got to do a story on that goes to mass audience. I know that there's a whole range of other things involved.
Well, I mean, it's a little difficult to sort of actually describe the process, but I would say that journalists sort of approach an issue in a way which is somewhat similar to how an academic would approach it. But there are some very significant differences. One of the things is that what any journalist looks for is a quick overview of, the background and history of a particular development. He's not looking at in-depth understanding or knowledge because there's simply not enough time to do that. But you do want to know, you have a complete picture of what has happened so far, so that you can then take the current development which you're planning to report or write on and appropriately place it in context. Because without that contexting, it becomes simple, reportage which is sometimes irrelevant and quite often wrong.
Right.
Even if an eyewitness report can actually be wrong because what you see is never always the full picture. So that's what we do. So, and then we, of course, also look for an angle immediately. If you tell me, says that, look, we are working on improving eye care in India, then I would then look for an angle for it. What is the bigger story?
Right.
The scale of the problem, is that the story? Or the solution adopted, is that the story? Which angle do I take to report that? And then accordingly try and gather the information which sort of fleshes that out. So.
And I always wanted to figure out, I mean, ultimately the driver when it comes to audience involvement, would that be how you could influence their thinking in a positive way, or what is very appealing for them?
It's a mix of different things, so we and again, there is huge variation on this even within the media itself. Media is not one size fits all. There are number of different publications and television channels and internet outlets and so on, and everybody has their own approach to things. But if you take, I would say, the mainstream media and the so-called serious publications, somebody like the Hindu groups, or the Indian Express, or any of the big papers, news houses, NDTV, whatever, they work on a mix of factors. One is, we look for need-to-know information which the public needs to know. We also try to provide stuff which you ought to know. You may not need to know it, but it's good if you knew it. And the third, of course, is nice to know. Fun to know. So entertainment is very much part of this, because you have to entertain, engage with your readers. Without that, that's the reason why fiction outsells textbooks. So we may do a mix of all three. Really.
And my very last question is, I mean, I think prior to us having this conversation on camera, you were mentioning about your recent trip to Paris and a very innovative idea that they use in a public realm and or as part of the solutions for change aspect. So I think it'll be great if you can just share a little bit.
Yes. So let me just tell you a little bit about the background. The Hindu Business Line is the India partner in a global alliance of media organizations, and there is an NGO, Paris-based NGO called Solutions and Co. What we do is that we basically look at bringing stories of people or organizations or enterprises which are solving society's problem in a sustainable and replicable and scalable manner. Positive stories. Stories which are actually helping to change, for people who are helping to change this planet for the better, for a more sustainable future. So what we do is that we collaborate on reporting such stories, and we pool our stories, and once a year we bring a special issue which brings together all these stories from around the globe in one thing. And this goes out in 20, 30 different countries. But we also meet to discuss these things. But one of the things that I noticed when I went for this seminar in Paris was this really innovative way that the government there, for instance, and it's not just the national government, but even the city of Paris, the innovative way they're using public spaces to foster this kind of activity. I mean, there are lots of people with ideas and enthusiasm and a desire to do good, but there are constraints. I mean, their resources are a big constraint, and when these things happen, just even the provision of, say, a public space, a space to meet and discuss and this thing at reasonable or no cost becomes very important. And that's what I found. I found that there, the foundations and the city government and the national government share their spaces which they own, buildings, other infrastructure, throw it open to such kind of innovative, organizations, so that they have a place to meet and discuss. And the other thing is a very strong culture of collaboration between such innovators. So one of the programs where I participated in, for instance, was that this news-based solutions NGO is part of a network of NGOs which tries to help each other out. And since we were visiting, we also participated in a workshop there where, there were a whole bunch of social enterprise startups, and they had, each of them, and they were facing a particular problem of finance, problem of scaling, technological problem. And what they did was all these organizations get together and they bring together their mentors and well-wishers, and you have a sort of hack session. You sit there in a group and you're from different kind of, so somebody is working on public health, somebody is doing, waste management, somebody is doing something, and somebody else is a finance specialist. But you try to help each other out. I mean, it's a collaborative sharing culture, which I found very, very interesting. I think, is really desperately needed in India. Because in India, everybody tries to do everything themselves, and there's no need to. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Share and collaborate.
And you get a whole range of different perspectives, which makes the solution much more practical and
doable and faster. And, at no cost. Most of the wealth of any country is not actually in physical wealth in terms of assets or gold or foreign currency reserves. It's in the knowledge which is in people's head. You leverage that, and I think you'll get to where you want to go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.